देवीं सरस्वतीं व्यासं ततो जयामुदीरये नष्टप्रायेषु अभद्रेषु नित्यं भगवत्योत्तमश्लोके भक्तिर्भवति नैष्टिकी. So we reading from Canto 5, chapter 14, text number 6. तत्र च क्वचित् आतापोदक निभान विषयान उपधावति पान भोजन व्यवायादि व्यसन लोलुपः. तत्र there in this phantom place, cha also, kvachit sometimes, atapa udka nibhan like the water in a mirage in the desert, vishayan the objects of sense enjoyment, upadhavati runs after, pana to drinking, bhojana to eating, vyavaya to sex life, adi and so on. Vyasana with addiction, lolupaha a debauchee. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Srila Prabhupada. Jai Srila Prabhupada. Sometimes in this house in the sky, Gandharvapura, the conditioned soul drinks, eats and has sex. Being overly attached, he chases after the objects of the senses, just as a deer chases a mirage in the desert. Purport: there are two worlds, spiritual and material. The material world is false like a mirage in the desert. In the desert, animals think they see water, but actually there is none. Similarly, those who are animalistic try to find peace within the desert of material life. It is repeatedly said in different shastras that there is no pleasure in this material world. Furthermore, even if we agree to live without pleasure, we are not allowed to do so. In Bhagavad Gita, Lord Krishna says that the material world is not only full of miseries, dukkhalayam, but also temporary, ashashvatam. Even if we want to live here amid miseries, material nature will not allow us to do so. If we oblige, it will oblige us to change bodies and enter another atmosphere full of miserable conditions. Om Ajnanatimirandasya Jnananjana-shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namah. Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Sthapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamahyam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Padkamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunathanvitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakhanvitamsha Namo Vishnupadaya Krishna Pristhaya Bhutale Shrimate Bhakti Vedanta Swaminiti Namine Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Pashyat Deshatarine Namo Mahavadanyaya Krishna Prema Pradayate Krishnaya Krishna Chaitanya Namane Gauratushe Namaha. He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dina Bandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vindavanishwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vancha Kalpataro Besha Kripa Sindhu Bevacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namah. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Mukam karoti vachalam pangum langayate girim yat kripatam ham vande Shri Guru Dinatarinam Paramananda Madhavam Shri Chaitanya Ishwaram. Hare Krishna. So again, today we are continuing this discussion about the teachings of Jad Bharat to Maharaj Rahugana. So this today's verse is actually connected to the previous verse if we see. So here it talks about sometimes in this house in the sky, or it is talking tatra, there in the phantom place. So in the previous verse if we see, there was a discussion happening on this. It was talked about conditioned souls who are too much attached to materialistic life or too much attached to the household life. And when they are too much attached to the household life, to the material wealth they have, the possessions they have, then naturally, as Prabhupada explains, they develop that false ego, that pride also. And then these people, they start accepting this material world to be real. Even though it is temporary, even though it has to end at one point, but the same people who are too much attached to this world, they start accepting this material world to be real. And that's why in the previous verse also, the explanation that is given is the person mind, because his mind is absorbed in these activities, he sees the material world as permanent, although it is temporary, like a phantasmagoria, a house in the sky. So phantasmagoria means some weird images we see in a dream or some set of series of images which do not exist. Something which is imaginary. Or another word that is used in the shloka is Gandharva Nagaram. Or a city which does not have any actual, city which does not actually exist. City which a person just imagines it to exist. And this is what when a person is puffed up by his possessions, by his material wealth, he just imagines that this place is actually real, which is a place which is temporary and which is full of miseries. He doesn't understand because he's too much attached to it. So now in this verse also, Prabhupada talks about that, or the verse talks about Tatra cha kuchit ata podaka. Tatra means he's talking about the same place or this material world, which a person is too much illusion, too much blind, and he's thinking this is real. And then he's telling what does a person do in this world. So in this house or in this Gandharva Pura that is there, or an imaginary place that is there, Ata Podaka Nibhan. He just runs after happiness. So here the example is given of mirage in the desert. So we know this example just like deer or animals, or even we see the mirage in the desert when we are going in some place, not just desert, in normal place also, when there is too much sunlight, we see that there is some water in front of us. But actually there is no water, it's just an illusion. But these animals who are there, they keep on running after that water, or they keep on searching for where is that water. So that same example is given here, that just like a deer keeps on chasing after the mirage in the desert, the person who is overly attached, or in the previous verse we were discussing a conditioned soul, too much attached to his possessions, too much attached to his wealth, he just chases after this happiness. And here the different things which he tries to do in this world are described. Upadhavati pana bhojan vyavayadi vyasana lolupa. This person or this foolish person who is there, he runs after all these things. He runs after bhojan, means eating, enjoying the senses in the form of eating, then drinking, and then it says vyava, that is sex life, and adi, means all these basic things which animals also run after. We speak about the similarities between animals and human beings: eating, sleeping, mating, and defending. And same thing, a person who is conditioned, he also runs after these four things. That's what's mentioned here, that he just, because he's too much attached to the materialistic form of life, he runs after these pleasures. And that's why his mind that is there, that in the previous words it was explained, the mind becomes mithya or mithya drishti. His vision is mistaken. His vision is not proper, or he does not understand the actual goal of life. And that's why he runs after these temporary things, because he considers this material world to be permanent. So this here, basically it's a continuation of the previous verse, which talks about how this place First, he accepts this place to be permanent, which is a place which is temporary. And in this phantasmagoria or in that dream, or he's like like a person in a dream, accepting all the things that he sees in the dream to be real. This person is seeing everything here to be real and he's running after the happiness there. So now further in the purport, Prabhupada explains that there are two worlds. One is the spiritual and the material. And then he compares that material world is false like a mirage in the desert. So that's what we already discussed, that how an animal runs after the mirage, people in this world also run after that false happiness. In the desert, animals think they see water, but actually there is none. Similarly, those who are animalistic try to find peace within the desert of material life. Just like the animal is searching for pleasure or animal is searching he'll get some happiness, people in this world also try to find happiness in this world. But the nature of this world, we see very nicely described in the Bhagavad Gita. Krishna talks about that this world is dukhalayam ashasvatam, that this world is full of miseries and it is temporary. Even the nature of this material world, that how it is a perverted reflection of the spiritual world. We see in the Bhagavad Gita 15th chapter very nicely Krishna described to Arjuna, Urdhva moolam adha shakham ashyatham prahur avyayam chandamsi yasya parnani yastam vedasa vedavet. So he talks about that how this material world that is there, it's just a reflection. Or he compares it to a banyan tree, an imperishable banyan tree. And he describes a unique feature about this place or this banyan tree, that it has its roots upwards and the branches of the tree is growing downwards. And basically we don't see such a tree existing, or we don't actually see such a tree with root upwards and branches downwards. And where is the only place we see such a tree? That is in the reflection in the water, where we see such a tree existing. And similarly, he says that even this material world, that is also a perverted reflection of the spiritual world. And then further it's explained that just like the tree that is there, that is reflected on the surface of the water. Similarly, the spiritual world is reflected on the surface of material world, or spiritual world is reflected in the form of material world because of desire. The desire of the living entity, as we say, the ichcha and the dvesh that we had towards the Supreme Lord, the desire to enjoy separately from the Supreme Lord, and the enmity or the enviousness towards the Supreme Lord, that why should he be the enjoyer? Because of those two things, we come in this material world, or the Lord creates this material world so that we can get that illusory sense of happiness. Or we can run after think that we can get some happiness here. The cause of that is the desire we have. And then when it speaks about the pleasure in the material world, so as it's given here also, and we have discussed many times, Prabhupada keeps on repeating the same point again and again, that there is no pleasure altogether. Or even if there may be some pleasure, but there is no pure happiness as such. Whatever happiness there will be, a person who is looking for happiness, he doesn't want it to end. Or he doesn't want that happiness to get over. But in this world, all our endeavors, all the things we do, the happiness that we get, that is mixed with suffering. And here Prabhupada speaks about these people who agree or who are searching after these kind of pleasures in this world, thinking that even among miseries, they want to enjoy in this world, or they want to stay in this world. And we see even those people, the fruitive workers, Prabhupada speaks so much about the people who are karma kandis, who are looking for some enjoyment, that I'll do some activity, I'll get some benefit. They also don't understand that ultimately everyone has to go through the basic problems of life, or ultimately everyone has to go through birth, death, old age and disease. And we see multiple instances in the Bhagavatam where such instructions are given. Like when Narad Muni met Prachina Bharishat. So that time Prachina Bharishat, we know his sons had gone to do austerities, but then he himself was engaged in fruitive activities. He himself was engaged in doing massive sacrifices, massive animal sacrifices and multiple other things, just for getting a better destination, just so that I'll do these activities and I'll get a nice destination in future or in the next life. But when Narad Muni comes, he asks him a question. He asks him a very, very amazing, very, very important question, that why are you engaging in these fruitive activities? What is your purpose behind that? And he says, generally the purpose of every activity in this world, or whatever things we do in this world, there are just two purposes. And Narad Muni says that the two purposes are dukkha hani and sukha vapti. Dukkha hani means destruction of all the distress, that my distress or whatever unhappiness is, that will get removed. And Sukha Bhakti means getting or attainment of all happiness. And there he explains that what you are doing in your life, or Prachini Bharishat, who was very nicely engaged in doing all those sacrifices, that won't help you get the same. No matter how much sacrifices you do or how much activities you go, finally you won't be able to achieve these two things. And that are Dukkha Ani and Sukha Bhakti, or getting the attainment of all happiness and destruction of all distress. And same thing for is valid for us, that no matter how much we hear it again and again, how much Prabhupada points it again and again, that there is no happiness in this world, there is no possibility of getting any permanent pleasure in this world. Still, again and again hearing, we keep on forgetting, and again we have to hear that. And we also try to look for some or the other pleasure, even in devotional service. Even while practicing devotional service, practicing different angas or bhakti, we start searching for happiness, not for Supreme Lord, but for our own pleasure. That what thing or what activity can give me some pleasure. And that is what is mentioned here, that ultimately, unless we engage in the service of the Supreme Lord, or unless we engage in devotional service, we cannot get any pleasure, or there is no happiness that is possible. And then further, one more very, very interesting point that is mentioned here is that even if someone decides, even if someone agrees to live without pleasure, we are not allowed to do so. So this is very amazing point, that whenever some problems also come in life, when generally when materialists, when problems come in their life, and they become used to it, with time they become adapted to it, or they just adjust themselves to that, thinking, okay, this is also a part of life, let it be. And we will live, even in that problem, we'll try to live happily. Just like in COVID also, people became used to it. And they said that even in that, we will somehow or the other try to find some happiness. But then the point that is mentioned is, even if we try to do, we are not allowed to do so. Ultimately, no matter how much ever we try, ultimately we grow old, and one day we have to die, or one day we have to leave this planet. Same thing in a pastime that comes in the 7th canto, same instructions, a similar set of instructions were given. So this happened when Hiranyaksha was killed. So Hiranyaksha, we all know that Lord took the form of Varahadev, and then they had a fierce battle, and then finally Hiranyaksha was killed. So now when Hiranyaksha was killed, and all his relatives that were there, that they were lamenting that time. His wife Rushabhanu, his mother Diti, and all the relatives, nephews, everyone was aggrieved. Everyone was morose, and all of them were lamented, including Hiranyakashipu. He was also aggrieved. But that time Hiranyakashipu goes and pacifies all of them. Even though that was a bit unexpected for a demon to speak such instructions, but Hiranyakashipu also speaks very amazing instructions just to pacify all of them. And that is what very much relevant to what we are discussing today, the instructions he gives. So he goes there and he tells all of them that, why are you lamenting for this person? Why are you lamenting for this personality? So first of all, he glorifies his brother. He says that he has died valiantly fighting in the battle. And we all know he didn't run away from the battle. He was fighting against Varahadev. So he's a glorious personality. He had had a glorious death. And why do you die? Why do you lament for his death? And then he speaks the Bhagavad Gita also. Then he speaks, just like people come together, living entities come together in a family based on their fruitive activities, based on their past karma. Similarly, people come together, and when the time comes, they have to leave also. Based on the laws of nature, they have to leave. But the soul never dies. Soul is permanent, and that's why you should not lament for his death. Or what is the reason why you are lamenting for this death? And he says that everyone in this world who is suffering is just because of his own karma. Whatever happens is because of his own karma. And like that, he speaks very, very different aspects of the scriptures. And one point we can understand when we read that demons also have amazing knowledge of the scriptures. Only thing is, they don't apply for themselves, they apply for other people. So they speak the instructions, and whatever he spoke was exactly from the scriptures. He didn't speak any wrong philosophy. He speak amazing teachings from the scriptures, but the only difference was he used it for applying it to others. Or always the point of using those philosophy was so that he can use it for enjoying or for applying it to other people. And that is a very, very important aspect that we also see, that ultimately we should understand scriptural knowledge, or reading all the scriptures, is ultimately meant to engage in devotional service, is ultimately meant so that we can please the Lord. It's not meant that we can become great scholars, quote the scriptures, and sometimes they would, like, we argue in this form that Prabhupada said this or Prabhupada said that. And the mood is not that we want to please the Lord, but to please ourselves or to prove our own point or prove our own ego. So that point we see here, that this tendency was there even in Hiranyakashipu to speak from the scriptures. But ultimately after that we see an entire chapter, he speaks about, glorifies so many things, he glorifies, speaks from the Gita. And the next chapter only starts engaging in austerities just to kill Vishnu. So this is what the motive of these people are. They know the scriptures, they understand everything, but their mood is that they are against devotional service of the Lord. So there he tells a very, very amazing pastime. A very, very amazing and relevant pastime Hiranyakashipu speaks in that. So he tells the story of Yamaraj. He tells about a place that once there was a country called as Ushinara. And there was a king there, his name was King Suyagna. And this was a very, very courageous king, very valiant king, and even very good by nature, very, very opulent personality. And everyone in the kingdom was very, very happy by him, very, very happy with his behavior. Once what happened is there was a battle that happened, very, very fierce battle happened, and he was killed in the battlefield. And that time when he was killed, everyone was in a very, very deep state of distress. Everyone, the citizens were lamenting, the queens had come out, they were crying, they were lamenting, and everyone was in a very, very pitiable condition. And the body was just kept there, just embraced the body. They were not allowing to take the body for the final sacrifices, for the funeral ceremonies. And they were crying, it said that they were crying very, very loudly. So loudly that the cry was even heard in the abode of Yamraj. So I don't know, it was said that they were crying so loudly that the cries were heard in the abode of Yamraj. And I was just thinking, when we do kirtans, when we chant the glories of the Lord, so that is for sure that all the demigods, Yamraj, Narad Muni, and everyone hears that kirtan, and everyone is pleased by that. And Prabhupada also says that sometimes they personally come and dance with us. So we have to be careful when we dance. When we dance next time, we don't step on them. So anyways, the point I was trying to make is, so Yamraj comes there, and when he hears that wailing or the sound of the crying, he comes there in that assembly in the form of a boy. He takes the form of a boy just to give them some instructions. So finally he comes in that assembly, all the queens and all of them were crying. And then he starts giving them instructions. He also tells them a further story. So first of all, he chastises them that you are all old people. You are all old in the sense you are much more older than me. You have seen so many people dying all around you, and still you are lamenting for one death of one person. Even though you are experienced, you know everything that you know. You have seen so many people dying. Every day people die, and still you are in such a condition. And then to pacify them, he tells about a story of two birds. So he speaks that once there was a hunter in a forest. And this hunter, he used to lure the birds. He used to capture the birds and kill the birds. He was like death personified for the birds. So now once what happened is, two male birds, two Kulinga birds were going there. And this hunter was able to lure the female bird. He gave some food item or something he had kept, through which that female bird was lured and it was captured in that net. Or it was caught in that net. And when this happened, male bird did not get caught that time. But seeing that condition, male bird became very, very morose. And as always, generally people do when problems come in life, he also started blaming the providence. That what have you done? That in my presence, she is caught up there and I cannot even save her. Better you should have taken me away also, or you should have caught me also. Like that, he starts blaming the providence. And then he continues for a long time. He says that who will take care of the children that are there? They are waiting for her. And she is caught here in the net. And who will take care of other family members? And how will I live? Who will take care of me? And like that, he speaks many, many things. Start just lamenting for that female bird. And with time, and so much time is spent in that, what happens? The hunter comes to that place. And hunter was hidden, and hunter was able to see that the female bird is caught, but the male bird is still there, not yet caught. And what the hunter does is, he takes out an arrow and shoots an arrow that pierces the body of that male bird. And the point, even before the female bird, the male bird was killed. So same thing that Prabhupada mentions in this purport, that even if someone agrees to live without pleasure, or someone thinks that he wants to live here amid miseries, material nature will not allow us to do so. And this same instruction Yamraj tells to those people, to the queens, that you are lamenting, or you are feeling so much distress for the death of the king that is there, or you are crying so much, you are wailing so much for the death of the king, but you do not know that with time you also will die, or you are losing your own precious time that is there. And he speaks a very amazing line. He says that Yamraj in the form of a boy tells those queen that you are all so foolish that you lament but do not see your own death. Afflicted by a poor fund of knowledge, you do not know that even if you lament for your dead husband for hundreds of years, you will never get him back alive. And in the meantime, your lives will be finished. That's what he says, that even if you keep on lamenting, crying for it, he won't ever come back. Just like we see in this world also, when someone dies, someone close to us dies, people are so much in morose, or people are so much depressed, so much affected. But then whatever they do, that person who is gone is gone. That person is never going to come back. And then he says, and in the meantime, your lives will also be finished. That's what we see in the story of the birds, that the male bird was lamenting for the female bird, and in the meantime, he was also shot dead. Similarly, people who waste so much time just lamenting about these things do not understand that they are also losing their valuable part of time, or valuable life that is there. And that is what Prabhupada tries to say here, that even if someone thinks, okay, all these miseries are there, even though this world is dukhalayam, full of miseries, let it be. I'll still stay here and I'll try to get whatever little happiness that is there. But still the person cannot stay permanently, or still the person is not allowed to live permanently. A person cannot live. And we see many general examples, especially when people are on ventilator, people are in a troublesome condition in the hospitals, and people try as much as possible to extend their lives. That how much as possible the person can live more and more. And yesterday also we were discussing about that personality with a person born with some disability, person being some handicapped or having some problems. No matter how many facilities are given to such a person, how much a person tries, one or the other day the person has to leave, or we cannot do much for that person. And that is what is mentioned here. Of course, one thing here to understand is when we speak about spiritualist. So here this is spoken that even a person agrees to live without pleasure, he's not allowed to do so, or he still has to undergo many miseries. But on the other hand, there's a complete opposite example when it comes to spiritual practitioners or over there. Like recently, I was hearing that post that was given by Mahavara Prabhu regarding glorification of His Holiness Japataka Maharaj. And he was mentioning that in the different circumstances he went in his life. Right from the 1980s, when his throat was stabbed by that crazy person who was there. And that time he had a near-death experience. Literally, it was said that 2 millimeters more, if that knife would have gone inside, he would have died that time. Somehow or the other, he survived, and he had only one desire, or only one goal is in his mind, that he was praying like that I want to stay more so that I can serve my spiritual master. So why I'm telling this example is, even spiritualists may have that desire, but their desire is for serving the Supreme Lord. There is desire is how we can serve the instructions of our spiritual master, and that's why they want to live more and more. And I was explaining in the further course of his life also, in 2008 he met with that paralysis that happened. 2017 also he had that health crisis. And throughout that entire stage, or throughout that entire life, he had just one desire, that I want to stay here, I want to stay more, just so that I can serve the instructions of my spiritual master, just so that I can fulfill so many instructions that have been given to me, so that I can stay here for fulfilling the instructions of my spiritual master. So when spiritualist has that desire is just so that he can please the Supreme Lord. Not for that I want to stay here more. Or like Prabhupada gives that example of one industrialist who was there. In Allahabad, one of his friends who was there, he was told by the doctors that you are about to die in some days. He had some chronic disease, it seems, and the doctors tell you can't survive for more days. And that person was also requesting to the doctor that I want to live more. Please let me stay at least for a few more years, because I have these plans, I have that plans, I have to open this industry, I have to do this, I have to do that. And Prabhupada points out that how foolish these people are. They don't understand what will happen even if we amass so much wealth, even if we open so many industries, ultimately that personality has to die, or ultimately that person has to give up everything. So this is the mood of the materialist that is there, that they want to live more, or they want more facilities so that they can enjoy their senses. But when it comes to spiritualists, even if they have this desire to extend their life, or even if they want to live more, they have only one goal in their mind, that I want to serve the instructions of my spiritual master, or I want to fulfill whatever instructions I have been given. And this we see in the life of spiritualist. And then finally it said, it will oblige us to change bodies and enter another atmosphere full of material conditions. In general, even if people want to extend, they won't be able to extend. And people who are searching for happiness in this world, that example is given just like I give the example of the reflection. The tree that is there, the reflection is just an illusion that is there, or reflection is not the actual tree. And let's say there is a mango tree, and the reflection is there in the water, reflection of the mango tree. And persons who just look for happiness, or who just look for pleasing their senses in this material world, they are like just those persons who jump in that water just to get some mangoes. Or persons who think, okay, I can get some mangoes in this water, I can get some happiness in this reflection. They are completely an illusion. And similarly, people in this material world thinking I can get some happiness, some juice in this material world, they are also in a complete state of illusion, or they are also in that complete state of bewilderment that is there. And this same instruction, when Hiranyakashipu asked Prahlad Maharaj, in that pastime also Prahlad Maharaj speaks the same instruction. That how this material world, he speaks about puna puna charvita charvanana. That people in this material world, they are again searching for happiness. They are chewing the chew. Or they are looking for happiness in so many things which have already been tried. So many people have already tried, so many people have already tested those things, and there is no happiness altogether. And yet people think that I can get some new way and I can find happiness in this. So there in that instructions also, very amazing set of instructions where Hiranyakashipu calls Prahlad Maharaj for the first time. And there also he asked his son that, what is the best thing you have learned? And Hiranyakashipu that time had learned from his teachers, from Shanda and Amarka also he had received some teachings. He had learned geography, politics, physics, whatever there is, whatever we learn nowadays, everything he had learned that time. But those were not the things he spoke that time. When he was asked from Hiranyakashipu, what is the best thing you have learned from your teachers? He remembered his teacher who gave him spiritual instructions. He remembered the teachings of Narad Muni. And that time he speaks about the first instruction he speaks, Tat sadhu manya suravarya dehinam sada samudvigna diham asad grahat hitvatma patam grahamanda kupam vanam gatoya dharimashtrayata. He was fearless in front of his father, and he's saying, he's first glorifying his father. He's saying Suravarya Dehinam, oh best of all the Asuras. And then he's saying that people who have accepted this household life to be permanent, or people who have accepted this temporary body and temporary household life to be the source of enjoyment, they are the people constantly in anxiety. Sada samudvigna diham. Why they are in anxiety? Because they have fallen into this deep dark well of material existence, or deep dark well of household life that is there. And in this well, there is no water, there is only darkness, there is only misery. No matter how much a person tries, I'll get happiness through this way, I'll get happiness through that way, he cannot get any happiness. And that's why he's telling his father, Vanam Gatoya, that you should leave this place and you should go to the forest. And even that time when Prahlad Maharaj speaks these instructions, Hiranyakashipu, as we all know, even though he got the association of a devotee, got the association of such a Mahabhagavat, he was not changed, or his heart was not changed at all. Rather, he starts planning how to kill or how to harm this person. First of all, he calls his teachers, he asks them, who has taught all this to him? Or where is he learning all this Vishnu Bhakti or all this devotional service? And he warns them that be careful. No one should come in disguise to teach him. It seems some Vaishnavas are coming in disguise and teaching him all this nonsense. So even though we know Hiranyakashipu also had all the knowledge, he also had read the scriptures. But now when he's hearing the actual knowledge, or he's hearing the actual realized knowledge of his own son, he's not able to tolerate. Because demons are always against the devotional service of the Lord. And then again we know, again he sends his son for going to teaching or for being taught by Shanda and Amarka. Again they teach him all the different subjects that are there. And again when they think he's nicely trained up now, nicely has learned everything, and he used to repeat also everything that is taught, Again, they bring him back to his father. Or again, Shandai Namarka brings Prahlad Maharaj back to Hiranyakashipu. And this time, when Hiranyakashipu meets Prahlad, he offers his obeisances to Prahlad Maharaj. Prahlad Maharaj offers his obeisances to Hiranyakashipu. And Hiranyakashipu is also very happy seeing his son. Oh, he's such a nice boy. He picks him up, he starts caressing him, and tears also start coming from his eyes. We see the nature of the demons, how quickly they change, or how quickly the nature actually changes. He was loving his child, holding, embracing his child, and it said that he was smelling his head, basically trying to know he's all right or not. And then again he asked him the same question. Again he asked him, even he was feeling so much affection towards the child, but again he asked him the wrong question. Again he asked him, what is the best thing you have learned from your teachers? And this time also Prahlad Maharaj speaks very amazing thing. The same shloka as I mentioned, Matirna Krishna Parato Satova Mithobipatte Graha Vratana Adanta Gobhir Vishatam Tamishram Punha Punash Charvita Charvanana. So his father is asking that where have you learned all this? Because when he speaks all this, he speaks about the Shravanam, Kirtanam, Vishnu, all the limbs of devotional service. And Hiranyakashipu becomes very angry. First he asks his teachers that where is he learning all this? And the teachers say, you don't blame us, we are Brahmanas, we are not doing all this. Even though Prabhupada explains they were also seminal Brahmanas, or they were just born of Shukracharya, they were not actually the actual Brahmanas that are there. But they pleaded to Hiranyakashipu that we are just Brahmanas, why are you blaming us? He has learned it from somewhere, or it's natural in him. And that time Hiranyakashipu asked that where are you getting all this? And Prahlad Maharaj, instead of telling that where is he getting all this, he's telling his father, you cannot understand, or you can, aapko nahi samjhega ye sab. So he's telling, Matirna Krishna Parato Satova, that your mind of those people who are Graha Vratanam, or who are too much attached to this materialistic life, they cannot put their mind in the Supreme Lord. And then he says, Parato Satova, either by their own endeavors or either by the endeavors of others. These people who are too much attached to materialistic life, they cannot ever put their mind in Krishna consciousness. And this we see the example there is Hiranyakashipu himself. He has read the scriptures, Swatova, he tried by himself. And Parata, by teachings that are being given by Prahlad Maharaj, he's being given those teachings. And yet his heart was not changed. So that's what Prahlad Maharaj says, Matirna Krishna Parato Satova Mithobi Padyeta Graha Vratana Adanta Gobhir Vishatam Tamisram. Basically, people who have uncontrolled senses. Adanta Gobi means their senses are completely uncontrolled, not in control. Such people, and they have accepted this materialistic life, or they want to enjoy this materialistic life. Such persons only move towards hellish life. Vishatam Tamasram Punah Punash Charvita Charvanana. And they again and again just try to enjoy their senses, just try to enjoy some things which have already been enjoyed, and which people have found out there is no pleasure. And yet they think they can get some pleasure in that, and they try to enjoy the same thing over and over again. And such people can never engage in devotional service, or such people can never come to devotional service. Even in Bhagavad Gita, Krishna tells Arjuna the same thing. Bhogeshwarya prasaktanam taya aprita chetasam vyavasayatmika buddhe samadau na vidiyate. That people who are too much attached to these two things, that are bhoga and aishwarya. Bhoga means enjoying, sense enjoyment. And aishwarya is opulence, that getting something in this world. So people who are too much attached to all these things, they are the ones who can never engage in devotional service. They are the ones who will be bewildered by the illusory energy of the Lord. And these people, they cannot never engage, or they cannot get that resolute determination to engage in devotional service of the Lord. And that is what here also Prahlad Maharaj is saying. Prahlad Maharaj is telling to Hiranyakashipu. So now question comes, then what is the solution for this? Or how, a person who is too sinful, person who is too much attached to materialistic life, which we see every one of us or everyone in general in this world are, then what is the solution for this? So this also Prahlad Maharaj speaks in the further shlokas. He says, Nasham matistavad urukramangrim sparshati anartha pagamo yadartha Mahiyasham Padarajo Bishekam Nishkinchananam Na Vrinitayavat. He speaks about what is the hope for these people. He said, Nasha Matistavad Urukramangrim. Urukramangri means the Supreme Lord, who does these Urukramangri or uncommon activities. So these people, they have no hope of engaging their mind in the activities of the Supreme Lord until and unless, and that is space Mahi Yasham Pada Rajobhishekam. Until and unless they smear on this body, or they smear on this body the lotus feet of the dust from the lotus feet of pure Vaishnavas. Or unless and unless they engage in the service, or they take shelter of some pure devotee, they cannot engage in devotional service, or they cannot put their mind in the Supreme Lord. Nishkinchananam Narvrinita Yadvat. And what is the quality of these pure devotees? Or what is their qualification? That is Nishkinchananam. Basically, they are completely unattached or completely free from material contamination. They have nothing to do with the activities of this material world because they have taken shelter of the Supreme Lord. So such people, when people engage in their service, or when people take shelter of such devotees or such pure devotees who are there, then that person can put his mind, or then that person can actually practice or advance in devotional service. Otherwise, there is no hope. Same thing even Rishabdev speaks in his teachings to Bharat Maharaj, or in his teachings to all his sons. He speaks, Mahat Sevam Dwaram Ahur Vimuktes. That just by serving a Mahat, or a Mahatma who is there, or a person who is free from the contamination of the three modes of material nature, who has taken shelter of the Devi energy, or the internal energy of the Lord, only by serving that person, a person can open his doors for liberation, or open his doors for going into the kingdom of spiritual world. There also Rishabdev gives those instructions to all the sons that were there, and ask all the brothers who were there. So he asked those 99 brothers to serve Bharat Maharaj, because he knew Bharat Maharaj was the most exalted of them. Bharat Maharaj was the most exalted devotee. So he also tells his sons just to engage in the service of Bharat Maharaj. And that was not a materialistic relationship that, okay, he's elder than you, so you should serve him, or he's your brother, so you should serve him, because he was the most advanced devotee that was there. And that's why all of you, if you engage in his service, then with time you can get purified and you can also advance. And similarly for us, when it comes to us practicing devotees, now someone may ask, who is that pure devotee for us? Or who we can serve so that we can get that mercy? And we all know, for us, that person or that personality is His Divine Grace, Srila Prabhupada. Because he has given all these instructions, all his instructions are available here in the form of his books, in the form of his lectures. And when we take it seriously, or when we follow his instructions as it is, as Prabhupada himself said that ISKCON is my body, and those who serve inside ISKCON, those who serve for expanding this mission, they do, or that is direct service to me. Or that's how we can also get the mercy of the Supreme Lord through his devotees by serving in this mission. Because this question is many times asked, how we can get the shelter of the pure devotee, or who is that pure devotee for us? And for all of us, that pure devotee is Srila Prabhupada, who has given all these teachings. And no matter whom we follow, or whoever different spiritual personalities we take shelter of, ultimately everyone has come together, or everyone is coming serving in this institution just for serving or just for pleasing Srila Prabhupada. And if we do that, then we can directly engage in the service of the Supreme Lord, or then we can directly please the Supreme Lord. That is the way we can get shelter of a pure devotee, and we can also get mercy of the Supreme Lord. And even if someone says, now Prabhupada is no longer there, Prabhupada is not there, so how do we know who is a pure devotee? Or how do we know who now to serve? Because we cannot get direct instructions. If someone says like that, we don't have, Prabhupada has given his books, but what exactly to do at what time? How can we understand all that? So that also Krishna makes it very clear in the Bhagavad Gita, that one who is sincere, tesham satata yuktanam bhajatam priti purvakam dadami buddhi yogam tam yena mam upayanti te. That ultimately the Supreme Lord is also involved in this process. When one is very, very serious to advance in devotional life, and one is very, very sincere, and he prays to the Supreme Lord, he wants to get the shelter of some pure devotee, then the Lord helps from within to get that shelter. Lord helps him to get the shelter of a pure devotee. So this thought that comes that, who is a pure devotee, and we start judging others, or we start offending others in that way, that thought is only detrimental for a spiritual life. Because if we are spiritual, we are sincere, and we are nicely following the instructions that are given to us, Lord will help, or Lord will arrange the circumstances that we will get shelter of a pure devotee. And we have seen this in the life of many personalities. Like we know the example of Gaur Govind Maharaj himself, who was searching for that shelter of a pure devotee, who was going here and there. And finally, he happened to be in Vrindavan. He saw that board of ISKCON, International Society of Krishna Consciousness. And just by seeing that board, he was very, very pleased that I was searching for this. And when he went inside, he spoke to Prabhupada and immediately he surrendered to Prabhupada. So the point we can see is if one is sincere, one has that sincere desire to get that shelter, then definitely the Lord will help him take him to or give him the shelter of a pure devotee. So this worry that if, okay, now Prabhupada is not there, who is that pure devotee who is there, or how can we get the shelter of a pure devotee? That should never be there. Rather, we should work on ourselves. Are we fit enough to get the shelter of a pure devotee, or are we purified to that extent that Lord will actually help us to get the shelter? We should ask that question. We should ponder on that rather than thinking about others, that who is pure and who is not. And if we do that, if we work on ourselves, if we introspect on ourselves and are sincere in our devotional service, then Lord definitely helps and helps us, guide us how to advance more and more in devotional service. So with this, I would like to pause here, and any questions, any comments, we can ask. Harish.
False like a mirage, and the aim of the saying is this world is temporary. So,
Can you repeat, Prabhuji?
Material world is mentioning this material world is false, and what is saying is this material world is temporary.
So false, actually this comes, I think, from the previous verse. Previous verse is explaining how people who accept this material world as permanent. Even though this material world is not permanent, people think it's a Gandharva Pura. He explains like a phantasmagoria or a world which is temporary. But people who accept that material world as permanent and thinking that all the happiness that is there, that is real. So that's why the Prabhupada is mentioning here that this material world is false. Or what he means to say, the happiness we derive in this material world, that is false. Just like the mirage in the desert. So mirage in the desert, deer is looking for happiness. Deer is searching for water. He is thirsty there. He is looking, how can I get water, become satisfied. Similarly, people who are searching for happiness in this world, so this is what Prabhupada is speaking, that happiness is false, or that is not the real happiness. And in the last he mentioned about material world being, a material world is temporary. It is not illusion, it is temporary. But the happiness we derive in this world, that is false. That is not real. Anything?
As you have mentioned, we should have some level of purity to associate with pure devotee, and it is also true like we will become pure and we will come contact of pure devotee. So how you both statements you can understand?
So when we come in contact, as we see the example here also, we are discussing the example of Jad Bharat and Rahugana. So Jad Bharat, we know in the pastime of Jad Bharat, before that also he came in contact with the dacoits. Dacoits who actually had kidnapped him, wanted to sacrifice him in front of Kali. That time also they were about to kill him, but he did not even speak a word. He did not give instructions because he knew that these people are completely in ignorance. There is no point giving them instructions. Even we know the example of his brothers. Jad Bharat's brothers used to exploit him, used to mistreat him, hardly used to give him proper food. And those also he never spoke, or they never came to know how great personality he was there within, or he was just used to behave like a dumb and deaf person. Because it's described they were also not fit to receive his knowledge. But here when it comes to Rahugana, he identified that this person is fit. The person Rahugana was going for that purpose. He had that desire that he wants to go listen to the Bhagavad Gita. And when this Jad Bharat could understand that this person had that desire, that's when he started speaking. Now you cannot say that Rahugana, before Jad Bharat started speaking, he was completely purified, he did not have any anarthas within him. He had anarthas, he was completely in the bodily concept of life. And that's why he even offended Jad Bharat that how are you walking, can you walk, cannot you walk properly, and I'll punish you, this and that. He speaks so many things. But still, Jad Bharat gave in instructions because he thought that this person had some little desire to advance in devotional life, or he was little bit in the mode of goodness. So similarly, anarthas will be there. As you mentioned that anarthas, those things will be there. But if we have the desire to advance in spiritual life, or the personality sees that there is some tinge or there is a strong desire that we have to advance in devotional life, then we'll get the shelter, then we'll get those instructions. Lord helps us from within. Because there are two things. One is what is our abhilash or what is our desire. And second thing is the anarthas that are there. Anarthas, no one desires to have anarthas. They are there because of our past vasanas, past samskaras. So now if Lord sees that we have a genuine desire to advance in devotional life, but still our anarthas are pulling us back, then the Lord helps us in various ways. But if the desire is only not there, or if we don't have a desire at all to advance in spiritual life, then Lord also won't help much. Or then as we see people who don't desire only, then devotees also refrain from giving instructions to them. So that way, if we have a genuine desire, everyone will have some anarthas, everyone will have some vasanas from the past. But if the desire is there, we can get the shelter of the pure devotees. And we can by serving them, we can get more and more purified. Thank you. ठीक है, ग्रंथ श्रीमद् भागवतम की जय, श्रील प्रभुपाद की